Hi, this is Bits and Pieces, the official podcast of Component Supply. I'm Kristin.
And I'm Mark.
Component Supply's mission is to be a resource for researchers and product designers by connecting them with the components and knowledge they need to change the world. Our podcast is just another way that we're a resource. So today, we're going to be talking about one of our favorite internal questions. We're going to be talking about RDT, which is our rapid development team, and we're going to be talking about wire. So first, Mark, one of these questions that you ask is, how many lives have been saved by a napkin? What does that mean?
When you say it like that, all I can think about is the old commercial with the owl that says, how many licks does it take to get
to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
Yeah.
You're going to do that on the podcast so people know how old you are? They don't even have commercials anymore.
I know. I said the word commercial, didn't I? That's okay.
It's an ad.
It's a baseline. It's a baseline. Now everyone knows in context, or can at least remove me from the context. So this idea of taking a napkin and drawing out and sketching out what's on your mind. This, I think, is the spirit behind design and research, right? Because you're not in your lab, you're not in your shop, you're not in front of your computer. Theoretically, you're not really working, but whatever came to your mind in that moment was so important that you weren't going to wait to get back to the shop. You weren't going to wait and get back to your lab. You were going to sketch out what was in your brain right in that moment, and then bring it back. This happened at a coffee shop or at lunch. And it came to you. And so the spirit, I think that's the spirit behind the product designer or the researcher that just has that momentary idea that it's so important. They're not going to wait. They're going to sketch it out and then see where it goes from there.
It's a mentality. If you're a creator that you have where your day job, your 9 to 5 or whatever, it stops. And now kind of the creative juices are flowing. You have some ideas. You have to get them down somewhere. And we had read a book as a company, Without a Doubt by Surbi Sarna, and she, had Envision and sold it to Boston Scientific, and she talks about, when she knows she's got this idea, she keeps the whiteboard in her shower. Like she has an idea, like she doesn't want to lose momentum, and I think that's what I think of when I think of a napkin drawing. You don't want to love the momentum. You've got to write it down somewhere. Whatever you have, you write down this idea. Well, what does that mean for Component Supply?
Well, we love that. We've always looked at this as a way to be a resource for product designers and researchers because they have an idea, they sketch it out, and maybe they go back and do a model. But the reality is there's before they kind of move past where they are, they got to kind of see what the deal is, right? They got to see, is this really going to fit? Is it going to work? Is that the right size? Is that the right bend angle? Bend radius, or is that the right angle? And this is where RDT comes in, but that spirit's been there too. But just from a resource standpoint, this idea of they've had this idea, and we want to support that, right? Like that is how the next thing is going to come. And maybe it's a bad idea, but there's another napkin drawing coming.
Right.
And those are that's that idea behind the napkin drawing that we love to see that passion that just because that their day ended or they're at lunch or wherever that idea comes, that it's important enough to jot down. Like what they're doing is important.
And I would say that mentality is really kind of part of our component supply training. We don't want our customers to have to wait till they have it all figured out to come to us. We want to be part of the figuring out with them.
Absolutely.
So we want them to send the napkin drawing. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be complete. You can just be trying one piece of the puzzle.
And you've said for years in our Wednesdays at 8, our trainings, that our mission is to be a resource to researchers and product designers to provide the products and knowledge they need to change the world.
Right.
That we will never be the ones changing the world. Like you've made that clear. We're not the one changing the world. Our job is to come alongside those that will.
Right.
And be a resource, products, knowledge, but then some of that knowledge is we're good at fabricating parts. So there along lines, come alongside them with that idea and helping them change the world. That is that spirit too, that it exists here at Component Supply.
Yeah, and I think for me that comes just from my experience. We talked a little bit about you kind of approaching medical school last time and being like, that's not for me. And I had a similar approach. I definitely, when I went into college, wanted to be in the medical field. I had 2 cousins who have cystic fibrosis. I watched them having treatments and double lung transplants. We've watched their whole journey. I wanted to be a part of that, but it wasn't really for me. But I knew that research, that's why someone with cystic fibrosis is no longer only living to be 18. It's because people kept coming up with this napkin drawing, kept coming up with new things. And so when I kind of put that together with Component Supply became more than just a job for me. It became a career because that's what I believed in. And I wanted the people that we work with internally at Component Supply to know what they're doing makes a difference. Let's not wait until the customer has it all figured out. Let's make sure that we're alongside them every step of the way, which leads us to RDT.
It does lead us to RDT.
So tell us some about RDT, kind of, and also I've been at Component Supply long enough to know that what we say with RDT as far as turning around prototypes quickly or even kind of pre-prototypes quickly, that we've been doing that for a long time, but now we have a name for it. What makes this different?
So, this goes back to, if we always did this, right? Somebody came and they said, I've got this idea, maybe we could do this. And we would, while somebody in sales was talking to them, we would hear them, because we weren't that big a place. So we would hear it, and we would run into the shop and start messing with it.
Or we'd be like, listen, like snap our fingers and like, you guys listen to this conversation with me.
Right. And so we'd run out in the shop and start messing with it to see if we could do it. And so that was just part of the fabric of Component Supply. But as we grew and production schedules are real, because now we have people relying on us to meet certain deadlines. The idea of the freedom just running out of the shop and start pulling material off the shelf, which quality and
inventory control.
Oh yeah, they don't like that. But then there was this moment, you came out and somebody asked you, I can't remember, you tell it, they asked can I pull on your heartstrings?
Oh yes, people are always trying to pull on my heartstrings for research. So yeah, I think it was like a Wednesday afternoon or something. I mean, it's like late, it's past our shipping time. You have to order, just standard off the shelf stuff you have to order by 2 p.m. for it to ship the same day. This was definitely a fabricated part, small diameter wire with an end form. And I, just honestly said, it's only a 1 week lead time. And he, just said, oh, that's too short or that's too long. We can't wait. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And I'm going to have to go in the shop and, say, I'm sorry. I knew it. I knew I was already going to commit to this. And then he says, if I could just pull on your heartstrings, it's for an Alzheimer's application, for our Alzheimer's research. And we're going to these trials. I need this part. I need to know that it works. And, so I said, yes. I don't even know how we went through quoting, and I don't even remember the process, but I know I said yes, went out to the shop and apologized, and we shipped it the next day.
Yeah. And I think this is, you kind of apologize, but the reality is,
everyone's on board.
Within the fabrication of components, like the fabric of our company, nobody got frustrated. It's easy to pull on the heartstrings of all of Component Supply.
Oh yeah, we're all in.
But this started this idea of like, okay, wait a minute, stop. If this is what we do and this is who we are, maybe we need to have a little structure behind it. And so
maybe we should talk about it.
Yeah. So we kind of took our fabrication team and we carved out this portion of it and said, okay, you're the rapid development team, which means when our heartstrings get pulled or somebody comes along and they have this idea, your job is to think in hours, not weeks. And so, and generally there's some flexibility, right? We don't have a drawing with hard specs. They're trying to get some ideas. And so they have permission to ask for forgiveness than for permission. So they'll go pull material off the shelf and tell everybody what they did afterwards in order to make what they need in a day.
Sure. Yeah. So for the rapid development team, their commitment is fast turnaround. So really with any of the components on the website that you see, whether it's tubing, wire, any kind of connecting components, connections or fittings, you need an assembly, all of those things are eligible essentially for RDT.
Sure. We don't want to pull anything out of the mix. This is where that team, our fabrication team, works with lots of products, right? Shrink tubing, metal tubing, the wire fittings, and so they have the ability to kind of think in terms of all those different products and solve problems within an array of different products.
Right.
So we don't really pull anything off. We do have some limitations in terms of lead time. If we have to make a tool, that usually adds some time. So that's what throws us off a little bit. If we have to make a fixture for some kind of a bend, sometimes that can add a day. Or if we have to make a template for taper grind or something like that.
There are a couple elements, right? So you need something fast. Fast for tapers, is different than fast for precision cuts,
Sure.
So I think there's the side of it it's going to be fast, but also that you're not bound to high minimums. You
That's
can
right.
get 1 or 2 pieces in your hand tomorrow just to see if it works, and then we go from there.
That's right.
And so oftentimes we'll see an RDT, they get the component. If they don't reach out to us, we'll reach out to them. Hey, how'd it work? You need something different. They might do a couple of orders of RDT kind of parts. They might place a couple orders for that, different configurations, or okay, we got the diameter. Now we need this inform. We need a different something.
Yeah, I mean, that's the, if you wanted to talk about a bad business model, our job is to make parts that people, that don't work for people.
Right.
So we're going to make this and send it to them, and they're going to look and they're going to say, hey, this bend radius isn't going to work, or this leg's too long, or actually I do need it welded into a hub, something along those lines. And so now we're kind of back to the idea of like, okay, well, let's make one real quick and get it to them, and they're then saying, okay, great, this is the next few things. And after 2 or 3, or sometimes that's 2 or 3, as well as a year or 2 days. People are moving fast. Some projects move slow, but through that process, they're finally kind of honing in on what they actually need and what's really going to work for that application.
And sometimes it's not at the start of the project. Like we think of RDT, we think of R&D as being kind of the beginning. Oh, I just had this idea. I'm going to turn it into something. But sometimes it is you kind of get into the project and you realize at some point, this isn't working. This isn't repeatable. This has gotten really expensive. Is there any way that we can make this a more cost-effective part? And so we're kind of in a revision already, and it's kind of getting pulled back into RDT to see what other options there are. And you kind of talk about how sometimes component supply will give you what you ask for, but sometimes we'll also throw in something else just so you can see it, whether or not that's appreciated.
I think it's always appreciated. It may not be useful.
Right.
That's what we laugh. This is where it is fun for, and we encourage this with our operators. If they've got if they're in the middle of making something for someone, they have an idea, go ahead and do it, because you never know what that may be a great idea, maybe a terrible idea, but it could give them some insight into what's available in the future, or at least the possibility they didn't know that we could put that into a plastic fitting or something along those lines.
Right.
And just the idea that there are options out there, whether or not they worked for that application doesn't really matter. At least it gave them the exposure to it.
Right. I think if people know component supply, particularly if they've bought, the wire and tubing categories for us before, they know that we love R&D, that we live in that space, we know it well, we're good there. But not everything stays in R&D. I mean, we hope that it doesn't stay in R&D. We hope it goes to production.
That's right.
So then the question is, for component supply, can we scale?
So this is where when we wrote our mission statement, to be a resource for researchers and product designers to provide the products and knowledge they need to change the world. The idea is that people hear that and they kind of put us in the R&D world,
right.
which is fine. We love that, and there's a lot of fulfillment there. But in order to really support that, in order to really be a resource, making the 1 or 2 pieces in RDT really, really quick is certainly that. Making a 100-piece prototype, following through, into pre-production or testing, whatever that is. You're making 1,000. If you just simply draw a line and say, "Hey, we don't make any more after this," you really aren't a resource at that point. We want to support those product designers, but then at the end of the day, if we stop supporting that project at some point, you really didn't do a good job for that designer. So yeah, I mean, we'll follow it through. We have projects that they're going to buy 6,000 a year. They're going to order twice a year or something like that, or they're going to order 3 million pieces a year. We're going to follow it through until really the point that they decide, hey, this is now pretty critical for us. We're going to pull it in house, and then we're going to gladly make sure that that's an easy process for them. Whether that is ensuring that that's an easy transition, or we've pointed them in the right direction for the supply, or we've secured the supply of the raw material for them. We're going to work with them through that process and when it's time to change.
Right. There are two things I really like about the way component supply works in the R&D space. One is we really do value relationships with people who do similar work or with similar components that we do. We want to be able to send people off if it's something that's not a fit for us. And I think we also are pretty honest with ourselves about our limitations and what we can and cannot do. So one example I would say for this is like nitinol shape setting.
Yes.
We love to work with nitinol. We have some nitinol shape setting capabilities. We think that that's important. And we love that prototyping. But when that scales...
That's right. You peel component supply back. We're tool makers at heart, and so we can make a tool to create the shape for nitinol tool setting. We've got some limitations in terms of the size of the part and the length and things like that, but there are other good companies that do a great job with that. And so, as I think you admit what you're really, really good at, you're proud of it, and you sort of boast that, and then the things that there are companies that are better than you, then you celebrate their victories and make sure that the whole point was there is someone in an operating room. That is the point. And so if we're not the ones to supply that researcher is still moving towards something important.
Right.
Let's get them in touch with the people that can help them.
So no matter where your project is, if you're looking for, a revision, you need to try something different with a project that you're currently working on, or you just have an idea, just a napkin drawing, you can call. We'll talk you through whatever process you're in, or you can email parts@componentsupplycompany.com with RDT in the subject line. You can have a picture of your napkin drawing. It doesn't matter. We're happy to work with you through the process and show you what we can do. But that kind of brings us to our component segment.
It does.
Because we're talking about nitinol already, we're talking about wire today, and how some of the wire terminology has gotten a little bit convoluted, even just in the time that I've been in the medical device industry. I've been here for 10 years. And for me, most of the terminology around wire was wire. But now I hear wire and mandrel and bar more. And I know those words have always been around, but they're used a lot more in the marketing scenes for selling wire, and I think it can be confusing. What are you looking for? If I find wire here and I find a mandrel here, is it the same or different? Now, people who have been in the industry forever, you're probably not struggling with this, but we want our podcast to be helpful.
People who know what a commercial is.
Yeah. So, but we want the podcast to be somewhat informative to people in every season of their career. So, can you help us define how we would define wire, bar, mandrel?
Absolutely. It is confusing for everyone that's been in here, because when they start to pull in the word mandrel, we tend to, those who have been here, or at least in certain aspects of the industry, look at that as more of a finished product, versus a raw material, which would be just wire or bar. So it does get confusing, because when you read that, you may be thinking it's one thing, but it's really not.
Or you're like, can this wire only be used as a mandrel? And we don't want people to think that, but we also don't want to be left out of that space.
Exactly. So we if we just take wire, right? I put mandrel over here in a category that's more like the finished product. What it's used for. That's not right, and I think it's here to stay. So you've brought this up, and so we'll address that. But let's just take wire and bar. We call everything bar that we have in stock. We stock from 150 thousandths and down, and we call it
wire. Not
call
bar.
it wire.
Okay.
Did I say bar?
You said bar.
Okay. See, I don't even know. So, but the reality is 60 thousandths and down is really considered wire. 61 thousandths and up is considered bar.
And this is like medical device.
This is kind of the medical device. The people who are drawing the wire, those companies kind of defined that, and it's different for for some of them. It'll somewhere between 60 and 63 thousandths. That's where they're gonna.
It becomes bar.
Say this is a dividing line. Below there is wire. Above that is bar.
If you are on the component supply website, it's going to say mandrel or wire. We don't really call out bar. It's kind of all wire.
We don't call that out. I tend to, in my simple mind, say 1/4 inch is a bar, but there's some technical side behind that, and it shouldn't throw anybody off. This is why specifications are so important,
right?
Because you can call it whatever you want, but if it's 93 thousandths in diameter and it's this long, and then it is what it is.
Right.
The mandrel comes in because it seems like they're using the word wire and mandrel kind of as the same thing, and so that's okay. We just need to know that so that we're not confused by it. We're not looking at one thing and saying, oh, but that's a mandrel, rather than realizing that, well, I can take that and I can still make a spring out of it.
Right.
We call it a wire. That wire can be used to make a mandrel, can be used to make a spring. So that is a little confusing, but I think as we move forward, we'll begin to see people say, oh, okay, that's really the same. They're talking about the same thing, same product.
The mandrel's the application. You're using that as a support.
Yep. And then beyond that, it's really wire is the material itself.
So for wire at Component Supply, our standard offering when you're buying off the shelf is going to be a 36-inch or 72-inch length. And when we think of wire, we think of that because it's hardly processed. Like it's pretty a pretty raw form. But we do some capabilities for that. But that goes for 304, 316. We've got the nitinol, the super elastic. We have two coatings so far.
PTFE and the Glide Med PTFE, which is a low PTFE coating.
Yep. So that's what we have kind of in stock on the shelf, ready for same day. But it is, and we talked about hypodermic tubing last week. Wire, I think, and hypodermic tubing are kind of neck and neck for what we do the most fabrication of.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about some of those fabrication capabilities. We talked in terms of RDT, but just in general.
Right, so nitinol, obviously there's shape setting. When you jump over to the stainless steel spring wire, we do a lot of bending for that material. We do some tip grinding, so whether that's a conical grind or a trocar, then centerless grinding, to specific IDs, as well as tapers, taper grinds.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the high-level fabrication capabilities.
And so we're keeping our lead times just like for hypodermic tubing. I mean, like 1 to 2 weeks for most quantities, most capabilities. So it's a great place to start if your application requires, any kind of fabricated wire. I mean, I would buy wire from us.
I would buy wire from us too.
So the other thing that we really like that we do is we have, when we talked about this last week for the hypodermic tubing, we have the stainless steel lab kits. It would be awesome if in one of these podcasts I would actually have it on the table. We'll put a link somewhere and you can buy these lab kits. So they're really great. We have 4. They vary in diameter sizes, so you can always just keep them in your lab and shop and be able to test various diameters without having to pay for the shipping of a 72-inch piece anytime you just need to try something. So we love those. They're available on the website. And of course, custom fabrication, the RDT side, small volume, quick turnaround, that's there for you. So, we want you to send us your napkin drawing. We're ready to get started working for you on your next project. Mark, do you have anything else you want to talk about today?
I don't have anything else. I love RDT. I love talking about RDT.
This is something you've been excited about for a long time, and I think we've been doing it a long time in some capacity. It's nice to have the dedicated team, the semantics behind
and the structure behind it,
and the structure. Yeah, and it's going well. It's something that I think kind of fuels our heart and passion for R&D as a company, and that everyone can kind of get behind. And we love to see where those projects go. And sometimes we see where the project goes in a few weeks. Sometimes it's months. Some projects, it's years, and we finally see, that's where that went. That's what y'all were doing. That's so cool.
And this is one of these things that makes it very real, right? So many times you can kind of, any job is like this. You can come in and you pull an order, you cut material, you grind material, but all of a sudden somebody comes in with this thing that pulls your heartstring, or you're it's kind of the excitement about this is the next thing that's coming, and to get involved with something that you're providing them a way to see very quickly to move their project forward. Our team likes to be involved in that. The people here at Component Supply really like to know, they believe in what our customers are doing. And so this is one way as a team, as a whole company, we get to be a little bit of a part of that. And so this is why RDT is something that's kind of, I think, near and dear to all of our hearts. But for me personally, this is the passion behind they're going to change the world.
Right.
And this is our way to be a way to be a resource to them to move their project forward to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish.
I love it. Well, thank you for listening wherever you are. I hope you'll check in for the next podcast. Now go change the world.